Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the QPM Energy Investor Webinar. I'm Jane Morgan, the Investor and Media Relations Manager, and today I am joined by our CEO, David Wrench. Following a review of QPM's assets and strategy, the board has resolved that the company's core focus will switch to accelerating the growth and development of our gas and energy assets. To tell you more, I will hand you over to David.
Right. Thanks very much, Jane, and thanks everyone for joining this morning. Clearly, there's been some significant announcements that we've made this week, and I just wanted to spend a little bit of time today just talking through a couple of the things that we've announced, in particular our refocus in the business itself and where we're going, which we announced on Monday, and then also I wanted to talk a little bit about an announcement we've just made this morning around progress at our project in Moranbah. So let me just start by talking about the announcement that we made on Monday. And as Jane mentioned, the board of the company has resolved to reprioritise our focus for the company going forward. As everyone would know, we have two fantastic projects and assets within the QPM group, but the challenge for us is, as a smaller company, is managing both of those assets within the constraints of our resource base. And the reality is that the current macroeconomic environment for nickel in particular and battery metals means that it's very, very difficult for us to continue to fund and for the markets to support the funding of the nickel project moving forward. So the board really has taken the decision that the best way for us as a company to preserve and grow shareholder value is to focus our efforts on our energy business. That doesn't mean that we're stepping back from our commitment to the tech project at all. We have been working very, very hard on, as you know, we've been working very hard on this project for many years, and we're continuing to work with stakeholders, both our offtake stakeholders who have become shareholders in the company and have really keen to sort of continue to support the project, as well as government, to really see how we find a pathway to continue the development of the project, to keep it moving forward, and in particular a pathway which means that from QPM's perspective, we are still an active participant in the project, but we're not having to invest substantial funds to keep the project moving forward. To that end, we did announce also on Monday some board and management changes, and in particular, Stephen Grocott, who has been the company's MD and has been really leading the charge with respect to the tech for a refinery project, has stepped down in his role as MD. He, however, is remaining on the board of the company and is remaining actively involved in working on and working with stakeholders to develop the tech project and continue to look to preserve and grow value for shareholders from the investment that's been made in that project. Stephen has done a phenomenal job over the last 4 or 5 years in growing the project and maturing the project to the point where it is now a real project. It's the kind of project, frankly, that the country needs to develop to really be serious about managing and helping and assisting with the transition to renewable energies and sustainable development of particularly nickel and battery metals. So we are absolutely committed to the tech project, and we're committed to moving forward, but we've got to do so in a way that's prudent and cautious and absolutely looking at every moment to find ways to do that in a way that preserves and creates shareholder value. We can't speak for our major stakeholders and major shareholders in particular, those who have invested in the company, GM, LG and POSCO, but we can comment that we're in very productive and constructive discussions with them around their continuing support for the tech project in particular. And likewise, we have a series of discussions underway with government, both state and federal, around support for the project, which is essential for us to maintain the momentum that we've built today. We all know that nickel, in particular, is a really cyclical commodity, and our intent is that this project has all of the hallmarks of a great project. We just need the right market conditions, and then this project will fly. So that's our aim and our intent with the tech project, and we will be working really hard to ensure that we can realise some value for this asset that we have within our portfolio. Just turning to a little bit the pivot around our energy business. Now, as you will recall, the energy business was set up to provide the energy supply chain that's necessary for the tech project. And as part of that strategy, we made an acquisition in August last year, and we acquired a project called the Moranbah Gas Project from Arrow and AGL. That project is an interesting project in that it is a producing gas project that has a large infrastructure position. It has a large reserve base, 2P reserve base, extensive infrastructure. It's connected to a number of coal mining assets in the Moranbah area, which are producing gas, and it has large compression and gas processing compression capacity in the Moranbah area. We are connected directly to the North Queensland Gas Pipeline, which transports gas to Townsville, and we have the rights to generate electricity at the Townsville Power Station. This collection of assets, or this group of assets is quite unique, as it provides both gas revenues through our contract to supply gas to Dyno Nobel in Moranbah, CRL in Townsville, the copper refineries, and also generate electricity through the Townsville Power Station. We can use the pipeline, given we're the only shipper on the pipeline currently, for energy storage or gas storage. So we're one of the largest batteries, if you think about it that way, in the eastern states electricity market. So that's the core of the asset, and the asset was clearly perfectly positioned to be the energy supply source for the tech project located at the Townsville end of the pipeline. And however, what we're now doing is thinking about how do we use this asset more in a market, and in particular in the eastern states energy markets, both gas and electricity, where this asset really seems to have some extraordinary value and growth opportunities. You may recall that we entered into a series of arrangements with Dyno Nobel, including an $80 million funding facility, which is intended to be used for developing the Moranbah Gas Project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And that was the subject of the announcement that we made this morning. So the energy business is in an interesting position, and we think, and the board thinks, that it has a real potential here to grow and expand, and that's why effectively the reprioritization of the activities in the company and resourcing within the company has been made. I wanted to talk a little bit about the announcement that we've made this morning, and that relates to there's a couple of activities that I think shareholders should be aware of and informed about. The first is that we are today kicking off the first well of a 7-well program to drill 7 new wells in the PL191 area, which is the main asset within the Moranbah Gas Project. That little green rectangle is the area where these wells are being drilled. The first well is spudding imminently, or now, and we are working towards completing the program towards the end of October, with production starting to come through in the fourth quarter of this year and into early next year. There is potential for us to go to a phase 2, which would add another 7 or 8 wells, depending on the results of this phase of drilling, but certainly that is contemplated within the Dyno funding facility. The area that we are drilling these wells has been selected fairly carefully, and John, thanks, mate. And the reason for that is there is an area. This particular area within the project has had a series of wells drilled in it over many years. But interesting, the most recent series of wells, and you can see them here as the light grey marks, and we've got marked on this particular graphic peak flow rates from a group of these wells in and around the area where the current new wells are being drilled, showing that it's a highly productive part of the field. Some of the wells historically have not produced in this area, and there is a large gas reserve remaining here, and that's precisely the reason that we're drilling the current program in this area. So this is the first time for us as an operator that we've drilled these wells, so we're being pretty conservative in terms of the way we approach the program, the way that we've structured the well design, and the way we will be looking to produce those wells in due course. But we think this is a very interesting opportunity to demonstrate that the Moranbah Gas Project is really a very, very significant gas asset, and is probably a tier one, well, in my view anyway, is a tier one gas asset, certainly in the Queensland area. Just some shots here of some of the activity that's already been completed. Obviously we need very substantial drill pads to be constructed, and then there's a photo of the rig that's going to be drilling the wells, all set up, ready to go. This rig, Lucas Drilling, it's a Lucas Drilling rig. This rig has been active in this area drilling wells for Anglo as part of their mine pre-drainage program. So they're an experienced crew. They know this area, and we're confident that the drilling process will be run very, very efficiently and effectively. I guess the second area that I just wanted to highlight a little bit, and we have talked a little bit about this, I think, in previous disclosure to the market, but we have been working really since October, November last year, in reinvigorating and bringing back online a large number of wells that were not producing for various reasons. When we acquired the asset back in September, there were about 96 wells producing in this field out of over 150 wells that have been drilled and completed. So we commenced a project of really trying to understand, for those wells that weren't active and producing, why not? What was the issue? And in a lot of cases, it was relatively simple fixes. Pump had failed, we could replace the pump. There were some blockages which we could clean out and flush out, and so on. And so we've had over the last few months, had a pretty dedicated program of going around to these wells, repairing them, cleaning them out, replacing worn out pumps, and so on and so forth, and bringing them back online. And that's proven to be extremely successful. And as of this morning, we're running at about 118 wells online and producing. We have another 4 wells that will be coming online progressively towards the end of the month. So that's a substantial increase in producing well count. But importantly, it's added about 3 TJs per day of incremental production, and about over 300 TJs, or approaching 300 TJs of cumulative production since we started this particular program. So it's been a very successful program so far. And we're pretty excited about it, and we will be continuing this program, and we know that we've got about 130 to 135 wells is our target to get to and maintain as our core producing well base. There's a couple of interesting things here, and maybe it's a little bit hard to see in this graphic, but you can see that as these wells come back online and start producing, they seem to have a very stable production profile. And the reason for that is a lot of these wells are very old wells. They might be sort of 15 plus years old. And while they come back online and only produce at relatively modest rates, they're very stable. And what we're finding here in this field is that these wells typically have a well production profile, which shows a decline rate in their early years, but then they sit very stably and have a very, very long tail of very stable production. And clearly what we're trying to do is increase the number of wells that are online and producing that are very stable. So what we've been able to do by demonstrating that that's the case through the current workover program that we've completed, is show that this field is not necessarily a declining field. In fact, it has all the hallmarks of a very stable production field. And what that's then allowed us to do is reassess the reserves that we have at our disposal, or the recoverable reserves of the field, on the basis that the decline curves and the decline rates that had been had been used previously are not quite valid, and we've shown that actually there is, a very stable field with low decline rates. So that helps us understand why there's so much gas here, and it leads us to believe that there is substantial capacity and upside to increase reserves within the MGP assets themselves. So the combination of the new well program that we're commencing today, plus the ongoing workover program, leads us to be confident around increasing production in line with what we have disclosed previously. And we'll be working to do that over coming months. And I think it provides a basis for a very, very interesting business model that has an exposure to gas, has an exposure to electricity, and has a large uncontracted reserve base. All of those provide us, we think, with a very unique exposure to the Australian eastern states energy markets, which are crying out for the type of assets and commodities that we can produce through our assets in the Moranbah area. So electricity, gas, they are in short supply across Australia currently. So whilst we are pivoting in our business and reprioritising our focus, we're going towards an energy-based business. We are not losing focus, and we're not losing our intent to deliver value for shareholders through the tech project. So we appreciate all shareholders and your great support of this company, and we hope, and we really hope that you stick with us, and we can deliver value through both arms of this business in due course and over time. This is a long-term business. Both businesses and both assets are long-term assets, and we think the company is really well positioned to start building towards delivering outcomes for shareholders over coming months and years. So look, Jane, I think that's what I really wanted to cover off, and I'm happy to take it from there.
Wonderful. Thank you, David, for the update. And thank you all for joining us today for the QPM Energy Investor Webinar. As David mentioned, the company will be providing further updates in due course, and we look forward to hosting you again in the near future.